Donnie and Dolly, the team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
All right, just ahead of Thomas Drance, a reminder that all guests today are brought to you by the Arnold Palmer Design Whistler Golf Club.
Oh,
a lot of submissions into the Delaney's OK Tire and Langley inbox saying that General Creek should be a band name.
Well, who said General Creek?
You did. You did? Okay.
You did. Yeah, it's a General Creek.
We'll do that later. Maybe. We'll see. If not, on Monday, a band name update. Canucks they're taking on the Minnesota Wild on Saturday. This is the 1-year anniversary of Jim Rutherford being hired by the Canucks. And with that, we bring in from The Athletic, Thomas Drance. Thomas, thanks for doing this, sir. How are you?
Donnie, good to see you back this week. Rick, always a pleasure.
We missed what would have been a massive argument.
I know.
Last week. I wasn't ducking you, just so you know. Luongo versus McLean.
Obviously, you weren't ducking me, Donnie. I know that, but I also had to stunt. It's too bad. You know, it would have been a Titanic battle, and I was setting it up with some shots at boomers in the days leading up to it. So, yeah. I was setting it up for us to have a good go, but so it goes. Feels like it's in the past now.
Yeah, okay. As we move on, I just want to say one thing, that everybody thinks that I hate Roberto Luongo, and I don't. I have total respect for him as a goaltender. So I'll just get that out there, and we'll move on, okay?
Likewise me with Kirk McLean.
There you go.
Kirk McLean is the class of the Ring of Honor group. It's just that he belongs in the Ring of Honor, and the Hall of Famer does not. He belongs above the ice surface, in the rafters, pretty clearly.
Okay, as we move on. Jim Rutherford, 1-year anniversary, your opinion of the job he has done in the last 12 months.
I think it's been bumpy. I think you'd say it's been bumpy. You know, one thing I think you could say has gone well is, you know, this team's done well identifying good hockey players, right? I mean, you look at Kuzmenko, you look at Mikheyev, you look at Bear. I mean, not across the board. Maybe there's been some blemishes. Your mileage on a couple of the defensemen they picked up, whether it's Travis Dermott or Riley Stillman, might differ. Mm-hmm. But I think in terms of finding like good supporting pieces on the margins, Dakota Joshua's been a find. Neil Zamon's been a find. I think there's been good work done there. You know, I think the big picture stuff has been less successful, right? I mean, there's clearly been a struggle in terms of finding alignment between his management group and Bruce Boudreau. You know, I think that's spilled over and had some impacts in terms of player development that I think we could easily Monday morning quarterback. Obviously, there's been some dysfunction organizationally. You think about the Rachel Dory stuff. You think about, you know, allegations that have been made in family court against Francesco Aquilini. Like, you think about all that this club has dealt with, you know, the locker room renovation overruns, the team practicing out at UBC. There's been sort of Rutherford's come in and I think brought a lot of competence to the job, but still this like very Canucks sense of dysfunction feels like it's still lingering beneath the surface, even though leadership has changed. And then you get to the big picture. You know, I don't know that we have a clearer sense today of what this organization's big picture direction is than we did the day Jim Rutherford got hired. You know, clearly in a variety of contractual decisions that this club made, with the JT Miller extension sort of being the big one, this club has doubled down on this core group, and yet uncertainty still lingers on the captain, Bo Horvat, a guy who's on pace to score 60 goals at the moment. Probably won't get there, but might get to 40. Is the type of player who rarely hits unrestricted free agency. How is that going to play out? And if you allow him to walk or trade him, isn't that inconsistent with the logic of signing a JT Miller deal that sort of locks you into a short-term competitive window as opposed to something perhaps a little bit more dramatic? You know, those are the big picture stuff is probably where I'd be most critical. The dysfunction stuff, I sort of wonder if new leadership coming in and that not changing indicates perhaps that leadership wasn't the problem. And then you get to the hockey stuff, and I've mostly liked the hockey stuff. The last thing I'd note here, gentlemen, is Jim Rutherford had a really tough first year in Pittsburgh. I know people don't remember this because of everything that came afterwards, but the Mike Johnston hire didn't work out, sort of sucked the joy out of the way that Pittsburgh Penguins team played. A handful of their first few moves looked bad. You think about the first year afterwards, Hornqvist's even outperforming James Neal. Like, a lot of criticism came Rutherford's way. The team got swept in the first round of the playoffs, not swept, lost 4-1, lost in 5 in the first round of the playoffs. And, effectively nothing worked. And then Rutherford and company went on one of the great heaters of the last, 25 years in hockey management, building that back-to-back Penguins Cup winner, the Phil Kessel trade, the Brandon Sutter for Nick Bonino deal, the Mike Sullivan promotion. I mean, on and on down the line, everything they touched turned to gold. So, perhaps he needs a little bit more time. I think it's fair to give him a fair bit more time before we really start to tear into this, but I do think that, if Canucks fans, and the majority of them, I think, are looking at this organization's performance this season, are looking at the body of work that new management's established in Rutherford's first year, and I think the widespread sort of sentiment is, we sort of expected more changes. Like, we either expected more changes or we expected this team to be better, and we've kind of got neither, and I think that's a perfectly reasonable reaction. I just would suggest that perhaps a little bit more patience is worthwhile, just considering Rutherford's track record as perhaps a little bit of a slow starter.
Thomas, I'm going to hand things over to Rick right now for the next question. I just want to announce to our audience that we've handled the chair situation. He has a new chair. We couldn't find any lubricant for his squeaky chair, so we've replaced the chair. You've got a Steel and Vance chair. I got a Steel and Vance chair. We stole their chair, Thomas. It's not creaking anymore. It's good. How's your chair at home, Thomas?
It's a dinner table chair. It's not great.
Is it Is it okay though? All good?
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, I don't sit in it very often. My wife, so I used to have a really good office chair, and then when the pandemic hit, like many people, I got evicted from what used to be my home office. Yeah. And my wife installed like a standing desk, one of those like fancy standing desks. Mm-hmm. So now I can't really work there because I can't churn out copy at a standing desk. Like, I can't write 4,000 words on some esoteric Canucks topic at a standing desk. So now I sort of just like work on the couch.
That's good. That's good.
I feel like a college student.
Yeah. No, it's all good. So I want you to answer this question for me, Thomas.
Okay, I'll do my best. No promises.
Besser, Horvat, Schenn, some really big decisions coming up. What are you hearing on all three of those guys?
Same as everybody else. I mean, the pessimism, we sort of went back and forth about pessimism on Bo Horvat. I think that's going to be a very hard deal for the Canucks to get done. On Luke Schenn, I had a good laugh at Ben Hankinson's Twitter feed yesterday, tweeting out that Canucks Army article. And, for me, the subtext isn't really like, I want my client traded. I thought that was an unfair read.
It's not that.
But if you're the top deadline acquisition, like if you're a guy who's going for a big asset at the deadline as an expiring, defenseman capable of playing the right side, look at the recent history of that, right? Savard goes for a first and a third. What happens next? He signs $4+ million in Montreal, right? Ben Sherratt goes for a first plus. What comes after that? He signs for $4 million plus in Detroit, right? I mean, the implication for me wasn't my client wants a trade. It's if my client's a top trade deadline acquisition, he best get paid like that on his next deal. Yeah. I thought that was a completely fair point to note by Ben Hankinson, albeit subtly. And then on Besser, I mean, this is one that I think is going to take a while to play out. I know there's been a big sort of furor around it. But it's going to be a complicated deal, right? He's got a lot of money left on his contract. I don't think it's one of those like urgent ones in that everyone's so unhappy that it must be done quickly. Yeah. I think it's one of those where we're just sort of in wait and see mode, but there's no question. He's on the block and obviously Hankinson has permission to try and find a trade. And, there's just sort of a relatively mutual understanding that if something can be found that works, that's fine. And if not, I don't think either side's unhappy with continuing the relationship either, particularly not in the short term.
Thomas, quickly, you're hearing the same thing that I am, that the Canucks don't want to re-sign Schenn and that they might turn around and look at him on July 1st?
I haven't heard the July 1st part, but I would be shocked by a Schenn extension based on what I'm hearing.
That's what we're hearing, yeah.
For sure. I don't think, I mean, at any point have you heard, like,
no
clubs are even considering talking extension or anything like that? Like, I haven't heard any of that. My expectation, my solid expectation and what I've been hearing has always been consistent with the organization sort of understanding that if they're not in the playoff mix, their expiring players are going to have to be dealt, and Schenn would fall in among that group.
And very quickly, Thomas, JT Miller, and pardon me for not knowing this, no ice time the other night in San Jose in overtime. Do you have any update on that at all?
No, I don't. Canucks haven't practiced since, and Bruce wasn't asked about it afterwards. I mean, first of all, there's two things here. One is they need to limit JT Miller's ice time more anyway. But the other part of it, I wonder is how that line played terribly, right? Yep. The
giveaways.
Horvat and Miller on the ice, they were outshot like 2-12 against the San Jose Sharks.
Yeah,
like come on. So I think it's just consistent with performance, and I'm sure it's a message being sent. We'll see what Boudreau has to say about it after the Canucks practice at 11 this morning out at UBC.
Yeah, and Horvat gets out because he wins faceoffs. Thomas, thanks for this. Appreciate it. Love the chair. Didn't make a sound. Beautiful.
Thank you, gentlemen. Be well.